I have a question for you. Do you recognize this? How about this? I'd be surprised if you told me that you didn't recognize what that is. In our day and age, plastic has become such a everyday household item that everyone in the world basically recognizes what plastic is and the uses of plastic. My name's Sterling LeBaron. I'm part of Group 5 and we are presenting on plastic pollution. With me is Sam Pugh, Carson Kelshaw, and Mitchell Peterson. So I just wanted to go over a brief history of plastics. The first man-made plastic was invented in 1968, excuse me, and it was invented by a man named John Wesley Hyatt. He invented this plastic to be used to replace ivory that was used to make billiard balls or pool balls. Ivory, for those that don't know, is made out of elephant tusks, and that is a very limited resource. So he invented this plastic to replace the use for ivory so that elephants weren't dying to be used for billiard balls. He invented this out of cellulose, which is derived from plant cells. So it was an organic plastic. The first synthetic plastic was developed in 1907, and this was initially used for insulating electrical wires. In 1935, we see nylon invented. It's a material like a fabric. Probably most people will recognize them as nylons that women wear underneath their skirts and dresses. During World War II, this fabric was used in parachutes, in ropes, mesh for the soldiers' helmets. So during World War II, the use of nylon skyrocketed, as well as other plastics. Another fun invention of plastic during World War II was plexiglass. Plexiglass is like glass in that it's a thin sheet, but it's very durable and it can be used at high speeds of travel. So the use for that is in aviation windows. And a fun fact, a fun statistic, U.S. production of plastic increased by 300% during World War II. And then we see a little bit after World War II, in 1947, the first commercial plastic water bottle was used. But these weren't very popular because they were expensive to produce. It wasn't until the early 1960s that a new plastic was discovered called high-density polyethylene. This plastic is cheaper to make and it's very durable, so many beverage companies turned to plastic instead of glass water bottles, as well as grocery stores turned to plastic bags instead of paper bags because it's cheaper and it saves them a lot of money in the long run. So this is kind of when household plastic products became more mainstream because plastic became extremely cheap to make. And I guess I wanted to next go over kind of plastic production, and this is very brief. I don't completely understand it, but this is just a little rundown of how plastic is made. So you first take petroleum. This is one butane. It's a gas. Natural gas can be used. Propane, crude oil can be used, and it's distilled much like water is distilled, where they heat it up to a high temperature, and then whatever kind of evaporates or comes off of that, they collect that. Specifically, they're collecting the hydrocarbons. These are molecules that are made up of hydrogen and carbon. Once they've collected these, they put a chain together. They make a bigger molecule, and that creates a polymer. This polymer then is, they put catalysts into this, which speed up the process of creating this plastic. And then they put additives into it. So these additives can change the color, they can change how flexible or how hard, how pliable this plastic is. And then they put additives in to stabilize it so that this plastic doesn't break down over time. So this has been just a brief history of plastic and how plastic is created. I'm going to turn the time over to Sam Pugh, who is going to talk on plastic pollution on Earth.
When we talk about plastic pollution, most people will agree with me that it is bad. It's something we shouldn't do and it's really not good for the environment. But do we understand really how bad it is and how bad it affects our environment? Let's take a look at this landfill here. As you can see, that's not somewhere you're going to want to build your house or take your summer vacation. It doesn't look pretty. People understand that. But let's talk about facts. Let's talk about how much trash was thrown away in 1 year. So if we talk about the world as a whole, the world threw away enough plastic last year to circle the Earth 4 times. That's quite a bit of plastic. Along with that, in the last decade, we have produced and thrown away more plastic than the entire previous century before that. In plastic bags alone, the world produced and threw away 500 billion. As you can see, 500 billion is a very large number. The average American throws away about 185 pounds of plastic a year. That's quite a bit for each person. Then US as a whole threw away 35 billion water bottles, plastic water bottles, last year, and when tested for BPA, in America, 93% of Americans above the age of 6 were tested positive. So that sounds like a lot of plastic and a lot of BPA happening. So let's talk about the negative effects of the plastic. So when plastic is thrown into a landfill, you don't see it anymore. It's out of sight, out of care, right? Well, let's talk about the negative effects that it has. When it is thrown into the landfill, the plastic interacts with the groundwater to create a hazardous chemical. And when the wind blows, all this plastic and this trash is spread throughout everywhere, throughout the city streets, throughout fences, it'll end up in the forest, it ends up everywhere. And the negative effects this has is it can poison the groundwater, and it creates these hazardous gases that when the animals come near and breathe it in, it can suffocate them and kill them. And it's really not that good for humans either. So, the other alternative is to burn the plastic, which when we burn the plastic, it creates environmental pollution and causes poisonous gases again. So when we breathe in that poisonous gas, it can cause respiratory issues. So we can either burn it and have respiratory issues and poisoning, or we can throw it in the landfill and have poisoned water and hazardous chemicals. Neither one sounds like a really great idea. So let's talk about the different things that we can do today to help with that. First, let's start with the don'ts. Eating out, of course, is bad for you. We need to not do it for plastic pollution's sake as well. When you eat out, they always give you plastic. Everything's plastic. The fork, the spoon, the straw, everything. So what do you do with that? You eat and you throw it away and it adds up more plastic pollution. So we need to make sure that we don't do that. Along with that, using single-use utensils. Like when you go out for your picnic, taking the plastic forks and whatnot, it creates more pollution. Of course, don't litter, that's a given. Don't throw trash around, that doesn't help. And avoid purchasing lots of plastic items. If you can help it, avoid the plastic in general, and especially water bottles. Plastic water bottles are huge. People buy them, they drink them, throw them away. So let's talk about the do's then. Of course, recycle, that's a given. We need to make sure that we're recycling. If you're cooking at home, you're going to produce a lot less waste, and it's healthier for you, like we said before. So we need to make sure that we're using reusable dishes and plates and cups. If you have a glass one over the plastic one, I know it'll take a little bit longer time to clean it, but it'll help save the world a little bit at a time. Plastic straws, those are always bad for the environment, so avoid those as well. And then when you go shopping, make sure that you take your own bags with you, because when you go, you always get like 10 bags, and it always creates a lot more pollution that way. So, of course, you can pick up other people's litter, even if it's not your own. I know it's not fun to pick up other people's trash, but it definitely helps the world out in a lot better way. Make sure that you're spreading this information with other people. A lot of people don't really know how bad it is and what they can do to help. So if you share with others what you learn, then it'll be able to help the world become a better place. So make sure that you're always doing that. And if you do have to buy plastic, make sure you use it as many times as you can. I've used plastic utensils in the dishwasher before, they clean up fine and they work again the next time. Just keep using them over and over until we get the optimal use out of them. And make sure that we're supporting programs that help fight against plastic use. If we support these programs, then they'll be able to help clean up the plastic a little bit better, and that we'll be able to have a better world. And make sure that you're always doing your part. I know sometimes it can be an easier way to just use the plastic and throw it away, but it definitely helps our world and helps our landfills and helps our earth look much prettier if you're doing your part to clean everything out. And there's a lot of simple things to do. And so now we're going to turn the time over to Carson for him to talk about the plastic pollution in the water.
Thanks, Sam. As Sam was mentioning, there are a lot of problems with plastic pollution on land and in landfills and pretty much all over the place. But what I want to talk about today is the problems that we're seeing in the ocean. Okay. Recently, I was on a trip in Mexico City, in Mexico, and about 70% of the beaches that we went to had areas that looked similar to this. Now, most people are thinking, oh, well, that's not what all beaches look like, but I can assure you that whatever beach you go to, you're going to find plastic on it. And more than that, any body of water that we're going to these days is going to have plastic in it. Today I want to talk about different things like the amounts of pollution that are happening and whatnot that will kind of raise awareness of where we're at and what we need to do to make a change. First thing I want to talk about today is microplastics. So in the ocean, I'm sure there's giant pieces of plastic floating around and things like that, but what's really causing a lot of issues are the microplastics. So for those of you that don't know, plastic doesn't actually break all the way down. It'll break down into little fragments or particles of plastic, but it's still there and it's still in the water. There's lots of problems with this because the fish are ingesting it, bigger fish are eating it, and plastic is being circulated into the food chain, as well as other problems. Fish are getting tangled in it, turtles are getting tangled in it. I'm sure you guys have all seen videos of those online. It's just something that it's not really fair to the environment that we're adding, since there is no real solution. Amounts of pollution that are currently happening, it's estimated that 8 million pieces of plastic are entering in the ocean a day. Now that seems like a pretty big number, but when you think about all the different countries and individuals contributing to this problem, it's staggering to think that there is that much plastic in the world. I know that plastic has become such a convenient thing for us, but we really do need to be more cautious about what we're using and what product we're buying based on the packaging that is being used. The environmental damages are obviously notable. More than anything, the wildlife and our world is suffering from this product and plastic in general. A lot of companies benefit because it's cheap, it's easy to make, it's easy to produce, but on the flip side, everything else is suffering from that. Global warming and another big problems that are happening in the world can be attributed to plastic, in my opinion. Now, lastly, I want to talk about some of the animals that are affected. Sea turtles are one of the big ones. Seals, birds, fish, all of the animals that are associated with the water are being affected. But not only that, we as human beings are being affected as well. As fish eat the plastic and ingest it, and as we catch them and eat them, everybody's being intoxicated by this plastic monster that we've created. I do believe that we can make change, however, and by, like Sam was mentioning, omitting the one-use plastic and by just being cautious about what we're using, it will be impossible to stop using plastic as a whole because it is a resource that needs to be used. But how we use that, recycling, being responsible, that's up to us. So let's make that change, and we'll talk a little bit more about that coming up.
Hi, I'm Mitchell Peterson, and I just wanted to bring all this together, bring it to a close, and give a challenge and a conclusion. Our challenge today is to reduce, reuse, recycle, and I'll talk a little bit more about how we can do that and how that really makes a difference. It's the oldest phrase that we hear about recycling and about saving the environment, but that's because it works. That's why we've heard it for so long, and that's why people still say it. So Sterling talked about where plastic comes from, how much we use a year, when it got big, when it got popular, and why this problem started. Then Carson talked about the problems that we're creating in the ocean, plastic island that is there because of humans and our waste. Then Sam talked about the landfills and what issues we're creating on our Earth, on the actual land, and how we. So I want to talk about how we can end this, how we can put an end to this cycle of creating plastic, wasting plastic, destroying the environment. Things like 185 pounds of plastic used per person per year, that should not be happening. That is an astronomical amount of plastic. And then things like what plastic does to us as well as to the earth. Plastic breaks down a little bit. It takes a really long time to do so, but as it breaks down or as it sits in the ocean, it gives off chemicals. It sits in the land, it sits in the ocean, and these chemicals are dangerous to us. Whether we breathe them in through the air, whether they're in our water, whether they're in our crops in the ground, wherever they come from, these are damaging us. And so that's why this needs to stop. So to talk about what we can do to end this, how we can change ourselves to change the earth, is just that. We have to do it ourselves. It has to be on us, and it has to be a personal decision. I can't go outside right now and somehow stop all the landfills or stop all the plastic from getting into the ocean. That's not something one person can do. It's a one-person thing in our homes each day. So the simplest things are what's going to make a difference. And number one for recycling is to just have the option there. If I don't have a recycling bin at home, if I have to go to a recycling center or even just go outside to throw my recycling away, I'm way less likely to put it in there. But if I open my pantry to throw away my garbage and there's a bin right there for recycling, I am 100% more likely to throw it in there. Whether it's a plastic water bottle, whether it's plastic, whatever it may be, paper, having it in your home, having that accessibility and that ease is going to make us more likely to recycle. And that's one of the biggest things I saw in my research, is have that availability, have that ease and simplicity for yourself to do your part. And if I do that and we all do that, then every home has a recycling bin. Every home is going to be doing better than we are now. The other thing is reuse. So reduce, reuse, recycle. So when we're reusing things, that's pretty simple. The biggest thing that came to my mind when I was thinking about this is water bottles. So we go to Walmart, we buy a 24-pack of plastic water bottles, and 24 bottles go into the ocean or go into the landfill. They can get recycled, but even still, there's so much plastic in the ocean, proving that we need to do something more than just recycle. So a couple examples I have right here that I've been doing a lot better using because I was using way too many plastic bottles. So this is a solid plastic, so it's still plastic, but I can throw this thing in the dishwasher, rinse it out, and use it again tomorrow. And I got a solid metal one. This one's nice because it keeps water or cold or hot, depending on what I'm wanting. But those are two perfect examples. You have those around your house, you have those at work with you, and every time you need a drink, it's right there, and you don't need to throw it away when you're done. It's cheaper for one, and for two, it saves the environment because plastic isn't going into the ocean or going into the landfill. So those are one example, is water bottles. Another one is coffee cups. At my job right now, we have an espresso machine, and there's coffee cups sitting there, just the plastic paper ones, either depending on the day. If you think about it, those are all just going to get thrown away. But if you bring your own coffee mug or big thermos, those are going to be reusable. Once again, saves the company money, but you don't need to use a little coffee plastic cup every day. You have a one that you can reuse, you can wash it, and keep going forward. And that's something that a lot of companies are doing. They're trying to make that change so that they're more environmentally conscious and they're not making as big of an impact on the environment negatively. So Sam talked a little about food, about fast food, and how negative that can be because of all the plastic they use. I worked at a restaurant for a few years, and the amount of garbage that we throw away plastic is just huge. Of course, we're going to throw away food and stuff that can't be reused, and that can't totally be helped. But the plastic, there needs to be a way that we recycled it, and that restaurant didn't, and that's something that a lot of restaurants are changing to. But we as consumers need to do our part too. If we go to a restaurant, we don't need to get a bunch of plastic forks and knives and straws. What we need to do is we can take it home when we're getting our takeout, go home, use our own utensils, or even Sam talked about washing our utensils. Take those plastic ones that they give us, throw them in the washer and use them again later. That saves the environment, because that is not going to end up in a landfill. And so the biggest things that we can do are the smallest. You know, we make our personal impact on the earth day to day. And so our challenge again to you is to find ways that you can reduce, reuse, and recycle. Whatever you need to cut out or start doing day to day is what's going to help the earth and help the environment and cut out this cycle of plastic. And so that's our challenge to all of you, and I hope you all accept it, because we need to save our earth. Thanks.